Steiner believes disease begins in the mind. I believe that 1000% because it could be your actions every day, it could be your emotional capacity, your inability to resolve pains and traumas and weaknesses within and all those things.
The world isn't a tough place because people hate each other so much. It's a tough place because people hate themselves.
They hate themselves. They want to be in that battle.
And that's what real narcissism is.
We are the master magicians of our reality. We are controlling which genes turn on, which genes turn off. We're not victims to our circumstance. Good to be here, Robert.
Good to see you,
yes,
man.
Sir.
Such a pleasure all the time. Every time we get to connect. But
Yeah.
This time we're here in a different setting. We're in my office.
Yeah.
And with this little studio thing we've kind of set up here. And
You mean your museum?
My museum.
Yeah, your digital museum.
My digital museum.
Yeah, this is epic.
That's interesting. How would you describe the office?
Enigmatic, mysterious, hidden,
ooh,
occult, if you don't mind me saying so.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
What gives you that vibe?
I love it here, man. It's a good vibe, and it's unlike any other, Class A building that you find in Orange County.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I love about it.
Well, thank you. It's your space is so beautiful too.
I appreciate that.
I haven't been there yet, but I've seen it.
Yeah.
Online, and I was like, "Damn, that place is gorgeous."
We'll have you down to the campus as soon as possible.
Love to see it. Love to see it. So, Chervin, you are enigmatic.
Thank you.
In many ways, and I mean that in the most positive sense, because you are this you have a stoic quality to you, right? And I don't know if you realize that. Maybe it's the way that you sort of conduct yourself, the way you read things online, your devotion to Rudolf Steiner and his work as well, if that's a fair characterization of it.
Yeah, sure.
And I think you're kind of like the quintessential kind of conscious man in today's world. So tell me, what made Chervin? How did you become Chervin?
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Having someone that you have a lot of respect for, see you and mirror some of those qualities, because what you see in me is ultimately within you. Mm-hmm. That's why you can recognize it. And for me, it's just having humility, humbleness, and knowing where I come from, knowing the sacrifices that were made for me to live the life that I've lived and continue to live. And I was raised on a level of wisdom and honesty and humility from my father. And he taught me at an early age, that you are ordained to live this life. You are my legacy. And he just kept filling my consciousness with that level of gratitude at such an early age. How much sacrifice was taken, how much their entire worlds were ripped apart, leaving Iran, coming to America, and that whole experience and having to start over. And for me to be the firstborn son in a lineage of thousands of grandparents that come from ancient Persia, mm-hmm. the firstborn son that was not born there as an Iranian in that ecosystem, in that reality, in that culture, but born in America, a new founded country that's 240 years old, whatever, in Southern California, surfing every day and having all of that type of life. And, I grew up, I believed in the best country in the world at the time. Mm-hmm. I believed in the best state in California. I believed in the best city in San Diego and the best part of that city in La Jolla, which is the Jewel. And I learned that at an early age.
La Jolla is pretty special.
La Jolla is special. And we're talking about.
So is Laguna Beach.
So is Laguna Beach. Very similar ecosystems and vibrations. And so I realized that at 5, 6, 7 years young. I was traveling a lot too. My family would send me all over the world. I'd go all over the world with them. I lived in Kuala Lumpur for a summer when I was 8. And I saw what poverty really looks like at an early age. And I remember, being upset that my mom got me the wrong color Air Jordans when I was 6 or 7 or 8 years old. And then seeing children on the streets of Kuala Lumpur that had nothing. Yeah. And they were ecstatic to meet me. And they were happy. And they didn't know anything different. That was a rattling moment in my cage. And I snapped out of whatever, entitlement I had or thought I had. And it opened me up to just have a lot more freedom in my thought. And from there, the mentorship of, David Wolf and a few others.
So David Wolf's your cousin.
He's my cousin. Mm-hmm. And he was at his time becoming a world famous raw vegan
known as David
avocado wolf.
He's definitely got the right middle name going there that says vegan, right? It
That-
definitely says vegan.
That's right. I mean, he was hardcore. I mean, his name avocado came from planting avocado trees all the way from Hamul and from the Tijuana border all the way up to Escondido and all over San Diego. And I was on a lot of those missions at an early age. And so I saw his evolution when I was, 9, 10 years young. He's 11 years older than me, and I was able to witness a lot of that and have a lot of pass through. And he just it wasn't so much always about health, but it was just about like understanding that structures and systems are not all they seem to be, and that there's ruling parties that have basically forced their own identity or their own systems into the minds of people. And the first book I ever read from David that he brought to me was actually Children of the Matrix and The Truth Shall Set You Free by David Icke, which, interesting enough, just snapped me out of so many things at age 10.
I mean, at age 10, you read David Icke?
At age 10.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like for better, for worse. But that's part of my karma, I guess. Like I had to go through that. And then around that time, I also, started going to Waldorf summer programs down in San Diego, where I was learning things outside of the scope of the state-sponsored schools, forcing a curriculum and railroading a child into their basic thoughts and their left brain thinking and memorization and all that stuff.
State-sponsored sounds really kind of dystopian as a way to describe the public school system.
But that's what it is. That curriculum is state-sponsored. It's regulated.
Indoctrination.
Indoctrination. That's indoctrination, like fully into the cells and into the hearts of children. And that's why I'm so big on Waldorf education and homeschooling and all these things. I believe in socializing children, but not forcing them into a rigidity which limits their growth and their alchemy and the reason why they've incarnated in this life. And my human design is I'm a investigator, I'm an anarchist, and I'm a martyr, which means I'll die for those first two things. Shows you how like hardcore I am, and that's why.
So if you believe that anarchy is disorganization, then you die for disorganization.
That's right.
That's kind of cool.
But anarchy, in my opinion, is creating organization.
Mm-hmm.
You get where I'm coming from?
I know, but that's not the way most people think of it.
Right? No, because words are powerful, as you know. The words are being misused. I mean, the English language has been ripped apart 10,000 times. The programming and word magic within it, it's all encoded in our being and the way we think and the way that we have patterns. We've been basically, hogtied into pattern thinking, and that's what a lot of the school systems do. And it's not like they're dark people, your principal and your teachers. No, they're just part of the system, and that's just the collective teaching and collective indoctrination. So I had that freedom and free will.
I mean, Smith in the Matrix isn't dark unless, if you're compliant, he's not dark.
That's correct. If you're compliant, he's not dark, but he doesn't even recognize his darkness.
No.
Right? Until he pulls the mic off and he unplugs. Then he starts to realize, wait, this isn't right. There's something here. Let me destroy it. Right? He becomes the anarchist in that whole saga and that whole story. And so for me, it's just building your own faculties, practicing discernment, being able to be a direct observer, being your own scientist, having the ability to trust your own faculties and grow those faculties into a level of momentum in your life, which then builds beautiful relationships. It builds abundance. It builds health. All of these things aren't something that you memorize or you read in one book or whatever. It's an amalgamation of things running in fluidity and self-trust. At the end of the day, I was taught that self-love is ultimately the deepest level of consciousness we can reach at, because it's self-love that tells me that get up on the rise, get into my rituals, get into my exercise, be good to thy neighbor. All of these things is a practice of self-love, because if we don't love ourselves, how are we going to show up in any of those things? We just forget about it and we get sucked into the materialism.
So let's rewind for a moment.
Sure.
And go back to your dad.
Yes.
Because you have mentioned, I didn't know you when your father was still alive.
That's right.
I think it was not long after that I started following you when he had passed away. And yet you have mentioned him to me. I have had the privilege of meeting your mother, who's just an incredibly kind, wonderful, majestic woman and example of divine feminine.
Thank you.
So it makes me wonder what your dad was like. So can you go into more details about your dad and why he had such an indelible impact on your life?
Appreciate those words. My father is still, within me in every cell of my body and every waking decision and in my consciousness. It's not a day goes by that I don't pray to him and think about him and communicate with him. So he's very much alive within me. I'm still in the the unwinding of him not being here in physical form, especially with all the discoveries and all the growth that's happening over the last few years. But I believe that he's, because his energy is incarnated in me, it's allowed me to go to this level of this workload essentially. My father represented a sage, if you will, almost like he was too good for this world. I always felt that. Everyone always communicated that, like, is he that pure as a man? Is his essence that pure? He was the take the shirt off my back kind of guy. He was the guy that saw people on the streets begging for money and he's running to an ATM. He's the guy that I would look over and I can see was suffering, seeing the plight of people around him. Where he grew up in Iran, he didn't have a lot of the stuff that's going on here in domestic US. The poverty, so to speak, when he grew up wasn't like that. People weren't living on the streets. The drug use, the alcohol abuse, all of these things, the fighting, this corruption, he didn't understand it, and he couldn't comprehend it, why people could be so mean to each other. And so my father was stoic in that sense, where his purity was so over encompassing that you would feel it within him, and everyone from all walks of life, from the top athletes in the world to famous celebrities to hardworking people to all the callers and colors would pay homage to him and see him because of his beauty. I don't know where I came from, because I have a parts of that, but I don't have that level of disposition that he had. It was sage like. It was god like. He was living in the infinite God. It was almost like my father, had incarnated after sitting in the jungles of Peru drinking ayahuasca for 100 years, and that was his incarnation of just complete rebirth and death, rebirth and death. Like, he's gone through all the trauma, because he showed up for everyone as a healer and as a helper, and almost to his peril, because I believe what manifested in him in disease was him not caring about himself and holding the burden for everybody else. He just wanted to take people's pain away. And I think he swallowed so much of that pain, and that's how it showed up as colon cancer in his life. And that's what my intuition tells me. That's what my anthroposophy teaches me. Steiner believes disease begins in the mind. I believe that 1,000%, because it could be your actions every day. It could be your emotional capacity, your inability to resolve pains and traumas and weaknesses within, and all those things. My father was one of those people that just ate up everybody's trauma. He's just like a garbage can of that. At his ceremony, an extra 900 people showed up that I didn't know. I had no idea who they were. I had no idea what effect this guy had, what effect he had on these people's lives. And after I had given my speech, which was really tough, um, there was a line of, like, 100 people wanting to just pay homage and tell me about their relationship with my father.
Wow.
Yeah, he was masculine, and he also held the feminine. He was actually more of my mom than my own mother was energetically. He was the safe place for me. And so that was a burden for me to a certain degree, because I always felt like I had this safe place for me, so I can go and get crazy and go wild. I was a wild kid. I was out of control in certain ways, and I had ferocity. I took a lot of my mom's spirit, my mom was fire. You met her a little bit later in life, and she cooked us a nice Persian meal. But she was the ferocity, where my dad was the water and the balancer. So
Really?
just to have that level of humbleness and humility in my life and wisdom. He was non-confrontational as well. He knew when to confront, but was non-confrontational. So it's like he'd gone through courses of nonviolent communication, probably in a past life or something. But he had that in him, and he was pure love, pure love.
Wow.
And so it's an honor to be his son and to carry on his legacy in this life.
Wow. So many of us are now getting to that age where we start losing our parents.
Yeah.
And I just got back from seeing my parents in Dallas, where they're getting up there in age, and we're like preparing for what will be inevitable, right? And eventually, and I was stunned at how well prepared they are. They've been high school sweethearts, so they've been together their entire life.
That's amazing.
And the one thing that really touched me, most of the weekend touched me, but the thing that really, really touched me is I had some time alone with my father, and he just said, "Son, I hope that we both go at the same time."
Wow. I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, the beauty of that, the poetry of that, the fact that your parents are still here with you and have that level of connection and consciousness. I mean, that's what it's all about.
So how did you deal with losing your father?
I don't know. I have no words for that. I fought his cancer for 7 years, and it came back and it disappeared and it came back. I threw everything that I knew at it. I mean, everyone in the world comes to me with their problems and disease, and I'm here trying to save my best friend, my father, my God, his life for years. I shut down every part of my life and just focused on that. And there was points where UCSD oncology was like, whatever you're doing, Chervin, just keep doing it. We don't want to give them any of our poison. Just keep doing whatever you're doing. It's working. It's working. And then it comes back and goes. So it wasn't this one thing. It was this whole experience, 7 years of it.
Wow.
It wasn't until the last week when it spread to his brain that I had given up. And I still feel guilty for giving it up at a week, but I did it for him because he was begging me to shut it down. He was more concerned with me than he was for himself. All the conversations he had privately with my best friends, my business partner and CEO Shahab, and and my friends and family, Jamie, the whole crew, was we need to figure out how Chervin's going to handle this. And they knew how much of my reality was his reality and how we were joined in that connection. And so I went to the practice. It was 2-3 years of medicine work that led me into this situation, almost like it was fate. I started getting into entheogens around 2014, 2015. I went into the jungles. I got blown away by very, very powerful medicines. I had death and rebirth, samadhi, the practice of dying before dying. I went through all of these intervals. If I hadn't done any of that work, there's no way I would have survived that whole process. That work showed me that I'm not the body. My dad is not the body. The soul is eternal. I felt that in those medicine realms. I was able to pull myself out of the composition of thinking I am material, that I am Chervin, that my dad is Mustafa. I knew in that moment, in those experiences, that the unfolding is way more clever than what we could even think to imagine, and that we are forever souls. And it was that experience and those experiences adding up that let me walk my dad through this. So a week before, when we gave up and brought him home, I started going back into the work, and there's a whole thing. We read him the rites, the Tibetan rites, and the Tibetans and myself believe you go through the Bardo states. And so I read him the rites, and the thinking was I have to lessen my hold on him. And so I had a meeting with my sister and my mother and some of the other family members, and I said, and I hadn't eaten food in months. I weigh 205 right now. I was 155.
Wow.
Yep. I couldn't, I was just in that kind of, it's like I was in some psychedelic Vipassana trip, like a hypnotic state.
Mm-hmm.
I was literally 50 pounds lighter than I am right now.
Can't imagine it.
It's just
And how
crazy.
long ago was this?
This was February 28th, 2019.
Yeah.
And interesting
So
enough,
right before COVID.
right before COVID, there's just something to that. And all the numbers, you like this, all the numbers on his transition date were all threes. Like it was 2019, which adds up, you do the math on that.
Mm-hmm.
That adds up to a 3.
Mm-hmm.
8:13 a.m., which is a 12, which is a 3.
Mm-hmm.
And 2:28, which is a 12, is a 3. All 333. I had my name Chervin 333 from 2016.
Wow.
And we kept him 3 days in his position. That's just the Tibetan way. And then cremated him. I don't know how I did it, man. It was a dream. The whole thing was a dream. It was some kind of cathartic nightmare that just flowed. And I can't, I can't comprehend the experience, and it's hard to still like get into it. Um, but I feel like I'm evolving every single day, and that's why I focus on the practice, and I focus on the fact that just like you, like how you just said right now with your parents, is how blessed are we to even have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that had never had a relationship with their father. I was showcasing my relationship with my dad for years, since 2015, since I got on social media around that time. It was me, it's like videos of me and my dad everywhere, and just showing like, hey brothers, you can love your father, you can be intimate with your father, you can kiss him and hug him and doing all those things. And my relationship with him spawned a movement with so many brothers and sisters saying just thank you. I have it's every day today, same thing. Just want to say your relationship with your dad has put me back into a situation where I can start over with my family. And that right there, my dad knew that. He knew that. And so it's a journey for sure, and it's never going to change. Till my last breath, I'm going to be missing my father, but it evolves. And what I do notice is that I definitely don't have the same highs as before. All the success and the growth and expansion and relationships and the enterprising and developing of all the alchemy with Cymbiotika and all these cool things, it's awesome, but it just doesn't hit the same. All my successes in my life, like my SAT score, or whatever, this job, this all these experiences, the first person to find out was my dad. And I remember I can just hear him. He'd always go, "My God," and I'm doing it from his voice. "My God, what did I do to deserve this as my son?" He'd say that same line. That was his opening line. Every single time, and I can hear it. So I kind of have him telling me these things, and he's shown up too in many ways, Robert. It's interesting. Like I'll give you a really cool story. So that Father's Day after he transitioned,
Mm-hmm.
I was invited by a good friend of mine. His name's Marley Bankoff, to go join him and his family up in Eugene, Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
for Father's Day. They do a whole celebration up there, and I was like, that's a pretty ballsy move for him to invite me up on. And Marley was close with my dad, and then I got it. Like they want me to be around the family spirit and to share that energy. So I went up there on Father's Day to Eugene, Oregon, in 2019, and we went on some incredible river, Mackenzie River up there. It's unbelievable. Eagles flying. We're all in canoes, and we get back to the house, and Marley's mom goes, "Hey, boys, can you guys go run over to the co-op and pick up these groceries?" So we jumped in the car. On the way up there, Marley is just confessing his love for me as a brother. He's like, it's been my whole life. I've never actually felt like I've had a connection with another guy like I have with you, where I can be honest about things. And I'm a little bit older than him, so I have like kind of an older brother energy with him. But he's also highly intelligent and has deep conversations just like you and I do. And he's getting very emotional, and I can tell it's just like emotions are high. And we get into the co-op. We will get out of the car, get in the co-op, and he goes, "Dude, I'm so sorry. I'm talking your head off. how do you feel today? Like, because we're around family, a lot of commotion. He's like, how do you feel? Like, I'm sorry for talking so much, but how are you feeling? It was right in that moment that he said that I caught something out of the corner of my eye. And I go, what the hell is that? And he looks at me and he goes, what is it? And I go, what is on that lady's shirt? And he goes, and he walks around and he looks at it, and I'm standing there, and he looks at me with disbelief. He couldn't believe what he had seen. And right when I saw his reaction, I knew what I had saw. So I walked around, and sure enough, was some random lady in some random town on Father's Day, and she had a T-shirt, and on that T-shirt was a goat, and above it said Baba. Okay. Now, if you
And you
know,
called your father
my
Baba.
Baba in Iranian in Farsi is Baba.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knew my dad as Baba, and they also knew him as the goat, the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
And you couldn't script that on Father's Day in that moment in some random town. I mean, we could do some calculus and try to figure out the probability of that.
Totally.
And I asked her with a tear in my eye. I said, "Where did you get this shirt?" She's like, "My kids made it for me." So it wasn't this like national shirt, Coca-Cola shirt, whatever, Hugo Boss, Gucci. So you couldn't, and there's been 10 more of those documented.
We kind of had a synchronicity this morning, even.
Yeah, Archangel Michael,
Yeah, we
the
were talking
sword, the
about
wings,
the sword and the wings, and
fighting
you didn't even know that I'd posted that this morning, and then you mentioned it to me that you were with your cousin in Texas.
That's all
And
we were going over. That's all we were talking about.
It's definitely in the
The
consciousness.
spirit of Archangel Michael,
It's
putting
in
the sword down,
consciousness. Yeah.
severing the head of the snake.
Woo, woo! I just got a chill.
Thank you for, by the way, thank you for asking me about my dad.
Well, I knew he's
Yeah.
such an important
Yeah.
part of all of our conversations.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting to ask that
Yeah.
for a long time now, but we
Yeah.
just never found the moment. And so thank you for sharing that with us. I know that he meant a lot to you. He still does mean a lot to you. If there's anything, and I know you already communicate with him often, but if he were alive
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
sitting in this chair right now, what would you say to him?
Thank you. Thank you. You are received in all of us. And thank you for having such a profound effect on both me and my sister and everyone you've come across. You've sacrificed everything for us, and now we are doing everything in your name. And it's real, dude. Like my motivation every single day. I don't need to be doing all this. I could just shut it down. We can go move it to the islands. We can build our farms. We can be focused on our work and our studies and research and all that stuff and keep things internal. But it's his energy that's inspired me to want to help people. At the end of the day, when I wake up every rise, I have so much love in my heart, and that's because of his spirit. And it's not like it's his activation of my spirit. He turned it on, and we are the cosmic goo of our ancestors. I'm sure what your parents have gone through to produce such a powerful force in this world, and how proud they are. And it's reverence to the highest level. And I just want to say he did it, and he knew he did it. He told me at the end, and he went out on his own. Like that rise when I woke up, I was sleeping with him in bed, and he basically, my dad was suffocating. That's what was happening. He couldn't breathe. And he's a claustrophobic guy too, so it was very troubling to see it, dude. It was so hardcore. And I remember I woke up and he was sitting up and he was staring at me, locked in, eyes to eyes, and he pulls the air off and puts it down. And then I immediately react, "What are you doing, Baba?" And I grabbed it to put it back on him. And he grabbed my arm, and he was a shell of himself. He had nothing left on his body. He went from this golden, beautiful, healthy man, weighing 190 to 140 pounds, dripping wet. He put his strength on my wrist and pushed it off and said no. And I just stood back, and he laid back down. And I just held his hand, and I heard him. I didn't watch him take his last breaths. I just held his hand. And everyone was asleep. I didn't wake anyone up. I haven't replayed that in a minute, so the courage. Yeah, that's the truth. That's what a man is. That's what a empowerment is. That's what a woman is. It's not this macho machismo bullshit. This ego, this I have this power. That's all crap. That's what it's all about. So, wow, that was yeah, man.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, bro. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah. Whew. Oof.
So let's talk about Rudolf Steiner.
Yes.
You went to Waldorf schools.
I went to summer Waldorf schools and then started my deep curriculum, I would say deep curriculum of outside of biodynamics and kind of the Waldorf perspective around 24, 25. That's when I first started. That's when I first read The Philosophy of Freedom. And then from there, How to Know Higher Worlds and The Way of the Initiate. And then from there, it just kind of spawned into this whole thing. Yeah.
And so for those that don't know, because I'm sure there are lots, because this is, you don't really find Rudolf Steiner that often until you start going into, either you go to Waldorf schools and then you know who he is because he's the founder of it.
But even Waldorf schools, they don't teach
They
you
don't
his
really focus on the
cosmology.
theosophy.
No.
They're his cosmology is really special.
Very special.
And so I came across it the first time in probably 2013, I would say, and I started getting deep into understanding. It was around the same time I got deep into Walter Russell. There are a number of luminaries that came up around that time, sort of the end of the late 19th century, early 20th century, and there was kind of a mini renaissance or enlightenment that was going on then. We had major advances in understanding of physics, major advances in understanding of mathematics even.
Yep.
And I would put Rudolf Steiner right up at the top of that list of luminaries. So what was it about his cosmology, his work, and this whole organization that he basically created, along with early on with Madame Blavatsky as well, which was the Theosophy Society.
Right.
So maybe you could explain what that was exactly.
Yeah, so I would say the major inspiration for me with Steiner, outside of other philosophical people or scientists, was he was able to really read, all the ancients' work to a profound level, and it was through a non-linear perspective because he was activating his clairvoyance and almost inhabiting those souls within him.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been clairvoyant at an early age. It had been documented with his family, and he was able to see like relatives that had transitioned and know about them. There was something special there. We've got so linear in our thinking in terms of science, and science now we know has become a religion of sorts.
Scientism.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And not to be tested, not to be, fought against or questioned or anything like that. And that was the opposite of how Steiner worked. Steiner wanted to prove the science through spirituality and vice versa, which those two should be running together in symmetry.
Exactly.
Right. And you know that very well with your work and all the amazing research that you've been doing and all of the downloads you've been doing from a higher source. Mm-hmm. And so that magnetized me towards Steiner initially. Also, his awareness that we don't fully know where we are. There's something to that. Making us have answers to everything, giving us 100% answers to everything always raises my eyebrow. And so I really appreciated that there was a lot of theory involved, and the theory was announced as theory, right? It wasn't announced as a documented empirical truth. That allowed me to trust him. I can trust his wisdom. I can trust his energy. I can trust the frequency that he was offering. And then when you start understanding that this guy wrote 1 million pages of work over his years.
It's incredible. The amount of work he put out. I mean, it's so prolific.
so prolific. He didn't live to 100. He didn't live to 90. You know, he was what we think he was, you know, murdered. I mean, that's a whole thing that probably down another story, but he didn't live that long in human years, 65. And so the fact that he was able to put that amount of work in and to get into such different angles of perspective, it really was attractive for me. Then I started going down his deeper cosmology and understanding what he said was, we don't live in a dualistic world, we live in the Trinity. And that's when everything kind of came together for me. Understanding this balance between hyper spiritualism and hyper materialism was the attraction for me, because it's something that I inherently felt as a child and as an adolescent and getting into my adult years. And I needed a system to kind of place this. And he chose Persian lineage as part of that trilogy, which is interesting because my body and my family goes back to that. And so that was another form of attraction. A lot of my family were Zoroastrian. You know, this is
one of the oldest
philosophies,
religious philosophies in the world.
That's right, where there is a good and evil. You know, and he chose, you know, the demon of materialism, Ahriman, as the antithesis to the Christ, and as the polar opposite of Lucifer, which is the bearer of light. And so Steiner is able to get you into a clear representation of perspective. He starts with super sensible knowledge. You'll hear that in all of his work. What does super sensibility mean? That means through your direct observation, through your perception, through the laws of perception. It's not through some crazy algorithm or something that you can't comprehend. It's finely tuning the super sensibles as a basis for you to get your groundwork in and start building into higher levels of attainment. And I really appreciated that. I really appreciated that sometimes we are led through misdirection because we're not trusting super sensible awareness, and we're all over the place. And so that was a stepping stone for me to be able to start working on my own faculties and building my own faculties. So I went through all the exercises of becoming an anthroposophist and training my mind and training my spirit and training my body, and treating my body and my vessel as something that I have to steward. And that was his perspective on biodynamics. And so I always like to talk about biodynamics because biodynamics is probably his most popular endeavor, even more so than Waldorf from the Waldorf Astoria cigarette company. And so biodynamics, we now know, is healthy food. You ask the average person who has any inkling of what biodynamics is, they go, "Oh, is that like organic food or anything like that?" Biodynamics is essentially you're understanding the soil, you're understanding a closed loop system, meaning you're creating a system where everything is self-contained. You understand the cosmology, meaning you understand the star chart, you understand the waxing and waning of the moon, you understand the seasons, you understand that the real new year is the springtime, not the Gregorian calendar. You know that how crystals work in the soil, how they refract energy and frequency and light and activate certain biotics in the soil. You understand how herbs work. You make preparations. You know that when you make a preparation, you're creating vortexes because that's creating structure and that's mimicking our cosmology. There's so much magic there. I just named 1% of it. That's biodynamics. Now, his point of biodynamics was not to create the best food on earth, the most mineralized food. His endeavor was to create the freedom and free will of man and woman to connect to the earth, to become true stewards. So his concept was, by knowing all this, by taking ownership of all this, by mastering the rituals, you're building the faculty of a human being to build super sensible knowledge. And from there, you have a vessel who's prepared to go into higher levels of attainment and the higher concepts of his occult knowledge or whatever it is. And so that right there is so huge, because I think that's one of the most fundamental missing components of our day today. We are living the opposite, Robert. Children are not tending to a garden. Okay, they're not tending to a biodynamic garden. They're not tending to a garden. They're tending to what their TV. They're tending to their materialism, their escapism. They're tending to video games. They're tending to all these different things. They're it's not even like we're not even going out and getting food anymore at the grocery store. It's being delivered to us. Okay, so we're not engaged in the ecosystem. We're not experiencing. Then we're going into state-sponsored schools and we have to memorize something and regurgitate it and then forget about it a few days later. That's not creating free will and desire to want to expand your consciousness and to grow your faculties and learn a trade. Steiner was big. You have to learn a trade and you have to love it. That's a super sensible awareness, right? That's common sense. Super sensible and common sense they're synonymous. Okay.
Well, that's because common sense is not so common.
There it is. It's not common anymore. We're not operating with common sense. There's a system that's been basically got its tentacles in our entire structure, our entire consciousness, our entire ecosystem. And we are now generation lost because we lost the last generation, the generation before, the generation before. So we're now in a cycle where these patterns and these loss of faculties are happening, and we're so like we've been sold a Trojan horse of technology that's going to save everything. It's going to catch up to everything that we're losing. There's no way. If we don't have able children and able bodies and able people growing into positions of power that have faculties of how to, manage a mite attack on your crops and how to harvest food and how to survive in nature. These are all hormetic stuff, right? Like the practice of hormesis. Why do I jump in a cold plunge, right? So I can get a survival activation and my body can handle that stress. So when I'm driving down the 405, someone cuts me off, I'm not going to get out into a raging fight. Because these are things that children need to be learning at an early age, especially while their brains are in theta wave. These are moments that they're memorizing everything and why children are so impressionable. So my whole thing is Steiner's work encompasses the super sensible, the common sense, practical, then evolves into a way of thinking that is built on practicality. It's practical for me to believe that there is a spiritual energy to this dimension. It's practical to me believe that there is a material energy because we are in bodies. We are, these have a set of instructions. But the Christ is that balance right in between. And that is what everyone's calling Christ conscious. Well, at the end of the day, Christ conscious is knowing that you need to be in a healthy, able body that's grounded to the earth, that's not filled with GMOs and poisons and herbicides, pesticides, larvicides, all that crap. Clean water, spring water. It's practical to get 8 hours of healthy sleep. It's practical to move your body. It's practical to sweat. It's practical to have proper breath. That's your prana. That's your life force. But it's also practical to know that we're not trapped in these bodies and we're not just, dirt beings that just have this experience and go back into the dirt. We are now proven that there is such thing as remote viewing, that there is such thing as psychic abilities, that we know that this all can't be random. That's another big thing with Steiner. The material mechanistic way of thinking was that, we've Big Bang Theory, we've evolved from apes. There is no quantum energy, that there's no energy outside of what we can scale and touch and smell and whatever human bound measurement. We know that's not the case. There's no way that all of this could be from some evolved bacteria strain and that there is something quantifiably directly related to a creator. And so merging those two worlds is really what Steiner does very, very well. And it's through a clairvoyant activation. It's not through a regurgitation. And I feel not obligated, but I feel it's part of my mission to turn people onto this awareness.
You've definitely turned me on more to it.
Yeah.
I was aware of it already, but I definitely feel the urge to study more of it.
With what you're doing, to have grounding with Steiner's perspective. And again,
I do love
he's
what I've read of
channeling.
his.
He's channeling.
Definitely, you can
Yeah.
tell it's a channeling.
Yeah.
But the things I really love is I love the pragmatic sort of like, I don't know, it's hard to describe. There's a masculine quality to it
Totally.
that's very grounded and actionable.
That's right. He's very actionable. He's super sensible. Again, like maybe you shouldn't fake inoculate the queen bee over and over. Maybe that's not a good idea. He said that in his bee lectures from 1917. He did it again in 1923. And he predicted the great American bee collapse to the year 1980. Just think about how crazy that is, right? It's like common sense. Like the bees are pollinators. They're what create life not only for human but for animal, everything, right? It's the ongoing creationism.
Cycle, right?
It's a cycle, right? Maybe we shouldn't disturb that and let it become fluid and learn how to incubate, just like children. Maybe we shouldn't disturb the growth of children, but we incubate. We allow them to have their experiences and allow them to think for themselves, as opposed to hold them down. It's crazy. The fake queen bee inoculation, like the hive chooses the queen bee. There's a whole frequency to that. And for us humans to get our hands in there and say, no, we're just going to artificially inseminate this and do all this, it's destructive. It's materialism. It's ego. It's all those things. That's why a big part of Steiner's work is the ego and the awareness of the ego. What I've learned from him on ego is that, the whole phrase, it's starve the ego, feed the soul, or whatever. I don't believe in that. I believe we need to have a deep connection to our ego, and that's self-love. You have a mission on this world. I have a mission on this world. He's got a mission on this world. She's got a mission on this world. Everyone has a unique mission. Does that mean that our missions are better or worse? No, but they're different. I have qualities that you have, and you have qualities that I don't have, and vice versa. And that's what makes us unique beings.
Which is the most incredible part of the universe.
That's the
uniqueness
beauty
that we all have.
This whole system that is trying to create a false uniqueness by hair color and this or whatever the heck it is, that's all false. They're really trying to just create everyone to be one steady organism, and we're seeing that unfold right now. It's pretty. We're in dark times in terms of what's happening on a social landscape, and so I learned from that awareness. I always uniquely knew this. I just didn't. I wasn't programmed to think anything different. To have a healthy relationship with my ego and to love myself. And that creates empowered beings that are here to bring good reckoning in this world. Whereas a scarred ego or a wounded ego, something that's traumatic and you're just building layers of scar tissue around, those are the one that's someone that becomes compulsory and reacts and gets angry and is, the cognitive dissonance is there. You can show them, hey, this is a bottle of Fiji water. Nope, I don't see that. You just can't see it because the scar and the wounding of the ego won't allow you. We're in that. And that's why you have such division in this world. That's why you have this Republican, Democrat bullshit, right wing, left wing, same bird. This whole thing is built on division. Divide and conquer, divide and conquer. Steiner knew it. Most philosophers knew that. And we're in it right now.
Oh, we're definitely in it. And I think that I like the way Steiner also characterizes the duality moving into a trinity.
Yes.
And I've written a lot about this from my own perspective on this. And, I think that the world is kind of going through this, what's the word, discombobulation. It definitely is in a state of transition, a state of flux.
Yeah.
Feels like half the world or a big percentage of the world is going to stay in more and more duality. So literally, families will be broken asunder.
Totally.
People that are on Christmas holidays can't talk about anything anymore because it's become offensive to talk about virtually anything.
It's crazy.
That's an alternative viewpoint. And here we live in a society where everyone's told, it's like, this is how you should be. Yeah. And I think what that does is it causes society to go to an extreme form of narcissism. But I believe also that narcissism can be the doorway, and it's hard for people to understand this when I say this to them. Narcissism is very often the doorway into higher order consciousness. And what do I mean by that, right? Let me qualify it, right? So what I mean by that is that it becomes so stark that the reality that the narcissist is experiencing becomes such an affront to what they thought they were actually experiencing that they snap into waking up. And I think what's happening is a lot of people that go into like social justice, they're sort of the far end of narcissism. They don't understand it. There's two types of narcissism. There's overt narcissists, and then there are covert narcissists, right? So covert narcissists often become social justice warriors, right? And so they don't realize that all the things that they're judging are just going to be attracted back to them more and more and more.
100%. You hit it right on the nail right there.
And the world isn't a tough place because people hate each other so much. It's a tough place because people hate themselves.
They hate themselves. They want to be in that battle.
And that's what real narcissism is.
Totally, completely agree.
It's self-loathing, except for it's placing conditions on yourself that you only want to see the projection you're putting in front of the mirror, not the actual reflection.
That's right. That's right. It's the Maya, right?
It's
it totally. Yeah. Well, I've come to this perspective just through direct observation, super sensible, that most people's perception of self is actually based on how they perceive others perceiving them.
Yes. Yeah. It's like a mind trip right
there.
Yeah,
just get that. We should probably draw that.
Yeah.
That should be a cool like image where you have someone pulling the mask off and then there's a mirror there. And you know what I mean? Their receiving of self is a reflection of someone else's vision of them. And so that really speaks to what you just eloquently put. And I'm with you 100%.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Think of 3 animals.
Okay.
3 animals that have some deep resonance for you. And tell me the first one.
Lion.
Okay. Tell me the second one.
Hawk.
Okay. And tell me the third one.
I would say owl, but it's in the same class. But I'll say owl. It holds a different frequency than the hawk.
Okay, so
yeah,
I recently learned, and I don't know if this could just be theory. I have no idea if there's any scientific basis to this. Probably is not. But I was told that the first animal is how you see yourself. The second animal is how others see you. And the third animal is how you actually are.
Okay, I like that.
Kind of deep.
That works.
So think about that for a second.
Yeah.
So that means that for you, you see yourself as a lion, right? And I can totally see that. I have that. You definitely have that vibe.
Sure.
And you carry that vibe as well. Others see you as a hawk. Now, why would you? And I think that's such an interesting one because when I think about hawk, I think about this super distance vision. I think about strategist, total strategist, speed like nobody's business, and very patient as well, extremely patient,
strategic,
and intuitive, and like ethereal. There's an ethereal. I think of like Horus, right? Eye of Horus.
Totally.
I think of third eye.
Yep.
Right, and so that's how people see you. And the third animal,
owl.
Owl. So that's how you actually are. Wise.
Yeah.
Wise like an owl. And it's interesting because the owl carries a lot of the characteristics of the hawk. Definitely does because I mean, it's also a hunter. It's also, very patient.
But at night.
Right? Exactly.
In the shadow.
Yeah, you threw a Halloween party at my house, which was pretty, you like that.
That's right. That was an epic party.
That was an epic party.
Yeah.
And
it's playing in the shadow, and it's the symbolism, and it's in that transition state of death, and seeing the beauty of death, right? Which is another thing that I'm experiencing. The owl kept showing up for me around my father. Interesting enough, we live in Hawaii part-time, and we were invited to the last house on the North Shore before you hit the Nepali coast. This is an old-time family that's friends with me and Avocado. And we drove in there. Did you see the video of that, of the owl?
Yeah. It was epic. I remember. That's one of the first videos
Wrong way sign during the day in Hawaii. That
was crazy.
The rarest thing ever. First of all,
you're driving in a Jeep or something.
Or in a Jeep. I'm the first to see it because I'm driving, so my vision's like a hawk. I'm seeing everything ahead of me, and I see this being. And as we got closer, I'm like, wait, what am I looking at? We were just talking about owls. We're talking about owl energy that I have on my arm, and I was just like, what? And then we came right to it, and it didn't move. It just stood there, right there, and in the
It did move.
video,
I remember.
it
I
nods.
watched it like 3 times. I
It
was like,
nods.
it was
We got to turn
like,
that video into something.
it was almost like going to Disneyland and you thought it was fake.
It looked fake.
Yeah, it
Big
did.
yellow eyes.
I know,
The Hawaiians, they call it pueo, which is the mysticism of the owl. And you never see an owl in Hawaii ever, and never in the day, and never in that spot. That was the craziest thing ever. And so that just symbolizes to me that it's like you're on your path. You know, it's like those are hyper synchronistic moments. You know, we're taught to like, oh, this moment happened, or it's a coincidence, or whatever, this and that. No,
There are no coincidences.
there's no such thing. And you can live your life like your perception's your reality, right? If you just throw that away in your mind and recycle it somewhere else and move on to the next thing, that's just your reality. I don't live that way. When there's an omen, when there's a sign, I'm tuning in on that.
Me too.
Yeah. And that's what creates the holy flow.
It's like what you said about even the 333 on your father's passing. And you found probably some comfort and divine connection.
Big time comfort. And I could be out of my mind or whatever, but that's shaping my life.
Look,
that's all that matters.
Some people believe there's no such thing as miracles.
Yeah.
Others believe that life itself is the miracle.
Follow those two sets of bodies around and see who's living the best life ever.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, yeah, there's a level of like pessimism and skepticism that we all must have, right? It's just it's inherent for you to make the right choices today. You just can't be, chewing off everything that gets presented to us. But there's a holy balance.
You know what's interesting? My 3 animals.
What are they?
Lion, also.
Okay.
My lion. Second one was eagle.
Okay.
And the third is bull.
All right.
And I would say
you are a bull.
Yeah, I'm a bull.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm definitely a bull.
Yeah, I see that.
I'm a Taurus too. So
yeah.
A bull has sort of this stoic quality, loves to look out over landscape and ocean, and just wants to kind of chill.
And hang out with the cows.
And likes nice things too, turns out. Hang out with the cows.
There's that story of the father bull and the baby.
The baby bull? Oh,
yeah.
I know the story later. I know the story well.
Let's get them all.
So we may have to edit that.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. But basically, I think that really matched. And it's interesting for me because I really believe that one of the most important purposes we have here in this world is to embrace who we are and our own uniqueness.
Amen.
And realize that that's the most valuable thing in the universe. I believe that God is the entire universe and that each of us plays an important role, like playing a note in a symphony. And we come here thinking that we have to be like everyone else. And so we start cutting all of our uniqueness away from us until we get to our midlife. And then we're like, I don't even like who I become.
Or even know who I am.
I don't even know who I am.
Identity crisis.
Exactly.
Totally.
And then you find somehow, some way, you find the true, authentic you.
Yes, right.
And then you can fall in love with that. And then that's when you're in flow. Because that's when you're playing the note that you were brought here to play.
Which is the most perfect poetic symphony of all time.
It's so beautiful.
And just leads you to nothing but miracles after miracles after miracles. And to speak to exactly what you're saying, it's not shocking why people aren't taking care of themselves, why people are in victimhood and poverty conscious and scarcity mentality and angry and always cataclysmic fights breaking out and escapism behavior and so caught up in materialism and identifying themselves to their materialism. And getting into gossip and loving to see people fail and all that kind of stuff. It's because they're hurting inside or they don't even know who they are. And that's their drug of choice. And we're at a level of addiction right now that's on a whole nother level. And addictions isn't just drugs and alcohol and sex and porn and gambling. Addictions is everything. It's just any form of escapism. whether it's your food, whether the way you're treating your spouse, whether all of those are addictions. They're taking you away from your own pain because you don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
It's a trip. We're in the Maya right now. Steiner, just to jump back on Steiner, Steiner said that around this time, 2020, 1/3 of the population will be completely soulless, will have no connection to their soul. Another third will be confused. Something isn't right. I don't feel right. I'm not doing this properly. I'm not encompassing my life properly, and something needs to change. And another third, for whatever reason, whether it's a karma or just life, a circumstance, or all of that combined, will be fully in their dharma, their chosen destiny, and are here for the fight and here for the win.
Do you know who else said that in a different way, but said the same thing?
Who said that?
Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh, really? Okay.
So Leonardo said there are three types of people: those who see,
That's right.
those who see once shown, and those who don't see.
That's right.
Now, he also said that in this time, because in the last 3 years of his life, he mainly wrote about the coming apocalypse, which apocalypse doesn't really mean destruction. It means awakening.
This is change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Evolution.
And he also said, he mentioned many times men without souls.
Wow. Look, there seems to be, as you know, there's coding in our world. There's codes to how things evolve in nature. There's codes to how soil works, how the sun works, how a redwood grows, how the human double helix evolves, and how DNA is sequenced, and all these things. There's codings in our consciousness. And it seems to me that we're in a very intelligent system. This is not random. We are not hurling around randomly, spinning around all through the infinite universe, complete disregard. No, there's a perfection alchemy happening right here, and we're all pieces of God, in my opinion, having a human experience and trying to wake up from the amnesia of where we come from. And I think that's a Hindu way of looking at it.
I'm not a human being having a spiritual experience. I'm a spirit, internal spirit having a human being experience.
That's right. And when you start having that level of you actually embody that, as opposed to it's a mantra or whatever. Even though mantras will help, but you truly that becomes part of your reality. Your discernment is there, and you're not in doubt. Then you're living in an ability to change and evolve epigenetically, and that's why I love what I do, and I love the idea of the biology belief. Dr. Bruce Lipton and their whole studies is that we are the master magicians of our reality. We are controlling which genes turn on, which genes turn off. We're not victims to our circumstance. That's an illusion, and that's a spell that's been casted on so many people. So many people are living in a hypochondriac mentality. They don't know what's going to happen because they haven't taken the time to learn how these systems work,
and also
unlearn first.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's the dismantling of the spell.
Because I got to imagine the people that resonate with your message. I would say the common denominator of people that resonate with your message would be people that are on the path or already in the process of loving themselves.
Absolutely, that's 100% accurate. And the people that hate my message are the people that cannot let go of their fundamental way of thinking.
And they generally don't like themselves, which is really interesting because I've seen. I find the exact same circumstance
for you
with my
too.
stuff. Oh, it's identical, totally identical.
We're a mirror.
Yeah,
right.
We're a mirror.
Yeah, we're a mirror.
So people that love themselves and are at peace with themselves. It's like it took me probably 40 some odd years to realize that every time someone would refer to someone else as being arrogant or egocentric, I actually take a step back and I'd say, why does he complain about this other person being arrogant or egocentric? I don't see that in this other person. In fact, the only time I kind of see it is the person who's saying it.
That's right. Yeah.
So then I'm like, why are they feeling that? And then you realize that it's some lack that's within themselves that causes them to see something that could be seen by another person who looks at it and says, that's totally innocuous, completely fine, but they want to be triggered.
That's right. That's right. That's actually their safety, because for whatever experience they had as a child or whatever relationships they had, they were wounded, and they scarred up, and they had trauma, and so they couldn't. You're triggering that response system. That little 12-year-old is now coming back into them, and they never were given tools to process that. And that's where you get where we're at today, especially like on social media,
Yeah.
where people are lobbing attacks on people with absolutely no disregard.
Cancel
culture, the whole thing,
because people want to cancel themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's happened.
Their inability to build their own design and connect to their own spirit is a stepping stone to want to crumble somebody else down. It's as simple as that. And the system is breeding this at the same time. So in order to step out of that, we just got to step out of the system somewhat. Yeah. And maybe just start getting into other things, and maybe start looking in the mirror, and maybe start analyzing yourself. We talk about Rosicrucianism. I think the cornerstone of it is self-evaluation. Yeah. Right? It's like before I go to bed, pretty much every night, I'm sure there's nights where I didn't, if it's late or whatever, I evaluate my day. I evaluate from rise to sleep. I look and see what happened throughout the day that caused me to tense up, that caused me to contract. Where did I feel that I was not in my best operating self? Because if we're not doing that,
yeah, you can't see the patterns.
You can't see the patterns, and you're just escalating a runaway train that's heading towards a steep cliff with no brakes, and that's true. Mm-hmm. This life is short, my man. Rumi says we are a drop of water in the ocean of time. I'm paraphrasing that. I should say that in Farsi. Cheshma Abba. No, okay. This life's short. So, do we just want to say F it and be reckless with it, or do we want to take a very systematic approach and define ourselves through careful thought? And again, that's the clairvoyance coming in, and that's the scientists coming in all at once. If you look at all the ancient masters, they all had their rituals in place. There's a reason why they got up at this time of the day and exposed themselves to the sun on the first light, and we're grounded to the earth, and we're in meditation and hydrated. There's a reason why they had these fundamentals on how they did things. If you look at the samurai and see their systems, it's very similar to some of the ancient Persian mystics. Mm-hmm. These are fundamental truths.
It's intentionality.
Intentionality. That's it. It's how you do anything is how you do everything, right? And I have that like plastered all over me, and so I always think about these things, and it becomes first nature too, where it's not militaristic in any way. It's actually then becomes your embodiment. Yeah. Do I like jumping in ice cold plunges at 5 a.m.?
After I kind of like the cold water thing.
Well, because you're starting momentum. That's the thing. Like once you start getting into that, then it becomes your form of exercise. Mm-hmm. Your form. It's your drug, right? That's as opposed to something that is giving you a deficit every time. I always think about that. Like, okay, if I do this, it's going to be epic. But what's the deficit here?
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's being a scientist.
Sure.
Right. That's applying the scientific method to your life.
And I see you actually, and I think this permeates into your workspace as well, because I don't see a separation between you as a person and what you do in your work. It's sort of like symbiotic. And I would call you a heart scientist. And I don't mean a cardiologist. I mean a heart-led scientist. So tell me about Cymbiotika, what your vision behind it was in its founding. It's an epic company for everybody. It's an amazing company that's doing really incredible things. And the things I admire just from an entrepreneur perspective is the intentionality that you put into everything, which I think it's because it's splashed in your forehead. How you do one thing or anything is how you do everything. And I've noticed that with your brand. I've noticed that with your products. The pace of your innovation and new products coming out is breakneck. which is really damn impressive.
I appreciate
So
that.
tell me about it.
I like that, heart scientist. I'll take that every single day. Keep telling me that. And I feel like I'm operating from the heart first, which is the focal point of all
Mm-hmm.
decision making. Cymbiotika was what you just said. It was a vision of doing things different. We know the pharmaceutical industry has their flaws. We know that treating symptoms is going to get us nowhere, and we know that a lot of the things there are, you know, I wouldn't say devious, but it's not creating a healthy economy, a healthy
Mm-hmm.
reality, all of these things. And so I investigated the supplement industry. I've been around it for 25 years because of David and a few other entrepreneurs and doctors and scientists. So I've just been around it my entire life, and I saw so many holes in it, so many bad actors in it. It was a race to the bottom to just slap your label on something and give someone a basic story and throw it in some e-commerce channel and throw it on Amazon and get it into some retail place. And I just was like, I was fed up. I know so many hardworking people that are spending a lot of money on these things. And we know that, our food is not the same food that it was 100 years ago. Commercial agriculture has changed everything. The industrialization of it has changed the medium change farm to big, large monocrop farms. So we're not getting our
Yeah.
nutrition
Mm-hmm.
anymore. And I'm under the awareness of orthomolecular medicine. The lack of nutrients at the right dosage is leading towards dis-ease and pathologies. So I wanted to be a solution to that. That's how I founded Cymbiotika. And it was built on the backbone of creating nothing but the best. And it was right around that time that my father was sick, that Cymbiotika was birthed, and my childhood, one of my childhood best friends, a highly intelligent family guy, with a big, big heart. You talk about heart. His whole reality is based on having heart. Shahab Elmi reached
Mm-hmm.
out to me, and I was a year in with Cymbiotika, and he said, "Hey, look, whatever you're doing, I'm on board. I can't believe what you've evolved into. We hadn't talked in 10, 15, 12 years that much, and I want my children to remember me for helping people, not for being rich daddy or whatever." And within 6 months, he came on. He had sold his previous company, came on as CEO, partner, brought his whole family involved. And within a year and a half, 2 years later, we were opening up our first campus in San Diego. That was 3 years ago. And we have scaled and escalated while keeping our motto the same and not taking any shortcuts. Cymbiotika, I would say I'm like a spirit of it, and I'm chief scientific officer developing the products. But the real core of Cymbiotika is our team. That organization, from side to side, there's no top to bottom, is just incredible. Their intention, everybody's in it.
Yeah.
Most of the people there were Cymbiotika fans, and they're just like, I got to get on board and bring my expertise.
Yeah, you have a whole
Yeah,
community.
whole
Yeah,
community.
that are really, really vociferously supportive, right, of what you've done. And that's
You don't see that
really hard
in
to
that
do.
industry.
Yeah.
You
You
don't.
don't see it in many industries.
That's right. Thanks. So, shout out to the Cymbiotika organization. You guys, I mean, they keep me on my toes, and some of the most brilliant people. I mean, we like to say we're like a women ran company, because we have some powerful women involved,
Mm-hmm.
and they're bringing that energy, that feminine frequency, and I'm talking about like the real caring energy and nurturing and supportive and family. And so it's a family run business, and because we own it, we bootstrap it. We don't have to subjugate ourselves to some outside board or influence that's saying, you're not having the right gross margins, or you're not doing this or doing that. So we're able to take risks and do things for the betterment of this world. And the audience has been there since day one. We have a core following that's been there since day one, and they've seen our growth and they've seen the energy. And me being in the position that I'm outspoken, I'm speaking out there. You don't see that in our industry. Is it sometimes a little scary and a little crazy? Sure. But like I wouldn't have it any other way. It's truth by transparency. And that's what Cymbiotika stands for. And we're innovating the best products in the world right now. I don't see anyone even coming close. And I'm not trying to compete with anyone. And Shahab isn't trying to compete with them, and our entire executive team isn't trying to compete with anyone. We're actually just trying to call the industry higher. That's really we always talk about that. It's like, okay, how can we improve? How can we improve to get better? And people, if they want to, they're going to have to step their game up, because we're here to teach the audience, and teach the world. This is an educational process. Why certain nutrients should be taking at this dosage with this combination at this time, why that's advantageous for 10 reasons. You need to learn that before you take our formulas. That's another thing. It's like how you do anything is how you do everything, right? Discernment. I'm sure there's a majority of people that don't know what it is, that the impact that's having, but a big portion of our audience, they're highly in tuned, they're learning, they're educated, they're reading the studies, and they get why we do that. And they also, because of that, they understand why these are the best products and how hard they are to manufacture. It's great. It's a wild ride.
So where can people find out more about Cymbiotika and about you?
I mean, Cymbiotika is everywhere now. I think we're in 8,000 retailers. We've grown tremendously. You can find it everywhere on the web. We're everywhere for good reason. And for me, that's a good question. You and I are going to have offline conversations on what potentials there are. I do have a private Telegram room, and I am
that you
on.
Keep very what's the word? It's not. You prune it.
I've pruned it deeply.
Prune it. That's a good way to say it.
I've removed to date almost 30,000 accounts. So I think there's 3,500 people in there right now. Nobody's anonymous. I keep up with it in terms of, if you're not engaging in there, I don't need you engaging there all the time. And I'm not posting things there relentlessly. It's like one post every day or 2 days. If you're not engaged, then it just might not be for you, because that's what that room is for.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not for me. I'm seeing these beautiful souls sharing their stories, and I have that room open so you can comment in there. Right. So it's not just reading something that I submit. And watching people engage each other and communicate with each other is the most beautiful thing for me. It's just, I feel like a father almost in that energy. I love seeing that growth. And that's what I want. I want more people communicating and talking about what works for them, what doesn't work for them, what their fears are. I always ask the room really powerful, self-reflective questions. What is it about yourself you would change? Why? Why do you think that? Who's hurt you the most in this life? What is it that irritates you about other people? These are really powerful questions. Yeah. This is all, Rosicrucianism at its core, without getting into like the hermetics or the mysticism. This is foundational work, and this is the way of the initiate. And so I'm inspired to be on this crazy ride. What a trip this life is.
What a trip it is.
What a trip
it is. What a trip every day.
This guy.
Wow.
You're part of my trippy life.
Likewise.
Yeah, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing and bringing to the world. It takes courage, but it also takes self-love. And so I'm one of your number one fans.
Likewise.
And I have your back.
Likewise.
To this one and the next one, man. For sure.
I think you're someone who has expressed also some frustration about like how the social media works today. The algorithms. I mean, recently you were basically talking about it. I was like reading your post on it. I was like, man, I feel you.
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit about, because I don't think everybody, unless you have a sizable following, you don't know what it's like to have that sizable following. So everyone else that doesn't necessarily have a sizable following just doesn't understand the issues that are so frustrating about it, because most people don't know that you don't even get to access your own community.
That's crazy. It's tough, because I felt like I've put so much blood, sweat, and tears into this thing.
You have. I mean,
with no return in terms of...
You put so much effort into your posts. I know you, again, how you do anything is how you do everything. So everything you do has got so much deep intention behind it. And I admire that, because I'm the same. I'm exactly the same.
You are the same. I see. You're relentless. I mean, you're more relentless than me, actually, and that's actually incredible. I've kind of had to step off a little bit just because of a little bit of frustration. I mean, in the beginning, I was writing thesis statements and pouring I've probably written 50 books on
Easily.
on Instagram and
Easily.
posts. I'll probably just take all that and turn that into a book. But I
did actually.
That's smart.
I turned it into 2 books.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Far.
And for you to get blunted by a system and not have your followers be able to see these things and for it to grow organically like it should is a problem. And there's so many accounts that are paying for followers and paying for all this stuff, paying for likes. It's so embarrassing, actually. I noticed some people that I know, and I'm like, wait a second, these are fake followers. These are all fake comments. What the hell are you doing? It's like going to a party and paying someone to hug you in public. It's embarrassing. Yeah, right. And so
I do have a friend like that, and I saw his followership go up from like a few thousand to like 160,000, but then he had no likes, right, and no comments. So I was like, I'm like, did you? This is just me talking to him as a friend. Did you like buy followers? He goes, oh, I hired someone, and they kind of gave me the wrong advice. Then I looked again, and all of a sudden there were like 10,000 likes. So you can buy the bots. So it's all different things that you can buy, right, at levels. And I've never, ever, I didn't even know that existed as a thing.
It's a thing. And I've known this for a while because I've seen it evolve over the last 3-4 years. And it's uncomfortable. It's especially as someone that like, how do you don't, I don't even say anything, but I've done some funny posts out there kind of calling people out. It's just what I do, and making people uncomfortable and like, hey, what are you doing? We all notice this. This is weird. But to speak on what you're saying, it sucks, man. I built 200,000 followers. I should be at 20 million followers by now, but my algorithm has been suppressed. My story sometimes.
I think it's also because of your type of content.
Yeah, of course.
I think because you're so in the sidecar of what mainstream healthcare would be, that they probably put you, especially during
of course. Yeah.
Vaccine period and all that stuff. I think you got dinged because of that.
Absolutely. And think about it. I only on that platform, I'm speaking 1% of what I really want to speak. Right? I know. And my whole thing is like, I'm not here to be
imagine if you could just be unexpurgated.
Oh, I mean, unreal, right? Unreal.
Polarizing.
It would be, yeah. Well,
but that's okay.
That's how some people have grown their profile.
How people see themselves.
True. That to a certain extent, true. I see some people growing their profile by being extremely polarizing too, and I can't be polarizing just because of my company. It's not worth it.
And by the way, neither can I.
Yeah,
we're both in the same boat.
Yeah, and that's fine. So we actually like cloak and dagger and coding because I want someone to activate their own free will as opposed to me telling them, no, this is I don't like that. I don't want that energy. And so I can be a little bit like pathetic in terms of building things with code systems. So it dropping clues and seeds into people's minds. I love that. Another thing is I'm not going to jump on the materialism train of escapism and give you clickbait nonsense. So I've noticed also in a lot of accounts that I know, they've strategically designed their platforms so it can go viral on their things. I'm not judging them. I don't believe in judgment. I'm just discerning. That's just not for me.
Right.
I'm going to keep it real. I don't need to have this reaching 30, 40, 50 million people, whatever. If that happens organically, that's fine. I've had some posts that have 3 million views on Instagram, which is crazy. That's great. But I really want to build real information source code. That's what it's all about. I want people to think. I'm not going to play into the same escapism behavior that all those other things are doing. I won't sell out for that. When you come onto my page, it's actually it's going to slow things down. And you're going to have to think and put some thought into it.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? It's work.
Yeah, I think it's hard work. We have an attention span as a society right now.
2 seconds.
Like a gnat, right? It's
two seconds.
Half a gnat or something.
It's 2 seconds.
2 seconds.
2 seconds.
Which is like, that means we don't think about anything.
It means that we don't know what dopaminergic process is. We just want dopamine teens.
Yes.
And that's a whole nother conversation. I think we kind of talked a little bit about it with children, not building faculties, not understanding where food's coming from, not understanding the hard work around things, not activating their free will. But we're hitting them the train of dopamine, where it's just pleasure, 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 end result, end result, end result.
Well, it's giving a man a fish rather than teaching him to fish.
That's right. It's a very dangerous game we're playing. because these are going to be our policymakers or the people that are running the world, and on what kind of consciousness are they going to be running it? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And so for me, your platform. So when I go to your profile and I look at your posts, I gotta sit down and like turn other things off. I can't be multitasking 10 different things in the middle of ideation of formulas, having the Laker game on in the background, in meditation with 432. I got to like sit and really drop into what you're putting out there. So that's why I appreciate it, because a lot of thought goes into it. And you know what? Maybe 90% of the population just don't have the faculties for that.
And that's
Well,
okay.
those aren't the people that are going to be listening
Right.
to this conversation right now.
That's right.
So we love you guys.
We love you guys.
Yeah. And we believe
we
believe in you.
And we believe in you.
Yeah.
And I think if you could put it into one sentence or a couple of sentences, kind of how you wish the world would evolve, what would it be?
Okay, how I wish. I like that. I like your idea of the unlearning and going back into the basics. I think we need to go back into survival techniques, mind, body, and soul. We've gotten too caught up into the technologies that have been sold to us as convenience and safety. It's the great Trojan horse, in my opinion. And I think you, and because of your position and what you do, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
And so
Trojan horse is a good way to put it.
Yeah, because it's sold to us for that, and all of a sudden we're having carbon IDs and immunization schedule IDs, and I mean it's freaking crazy. And so
I read one today that was nuts, dude. This was at Davos.
Okay.
Someone posted a thing from Davos where some guy was talking about how your earbuds that you use for like iPhone and stuff.
I don't use them. I don't put earbuds in my ears.
Just wait. If you do, you're probably not going to want to.
You don't want that square wave radiation.
Actually, they have a whole plan to be able to capture your brain waves. I know it sounds like it sounds messed up already, right?
Yeah.
Capture your brain waves so that they can ensure greater compliance.
Dude, I'm sure that's being worked on. I'm sure that's weaponized. I'm sure. I mean, they know all the frequencies. I mean, DARPA. I can go on and on. What's happening in our atmosphere. We don't need to go down those areas. It's full on. So how I wish we evolve. I wish we wake the fake up. And
that's the name of your podcast.
That's the name of my podcast. And snap out of this freaking illusion that we're in, this fantasy world. And we've forgotten what we've forgotten.
Yeah.
Just feel into that. I want to help remember where we come from. And there's a lot of beautiful people out there that are on that mission, that are going back to the indigenous, going back to our roots. I'm not against technology. I'm not against all of these things. We just need to have a grip on it, and we need to have it work with us and help build some of the things that we need to build to make this a better world. We cannot escape with it and try to destroy everything in its path and think there's a technology that's going to get us out of it. That's dystopia. That's Wall-E. That's the Ahrimanic impulse. Steiner said, 2020 it begins. The Ahrimanic deception begins. We'll be in the highest level of artificial intelligence disguised as our savior. And he thinks Ahriman actually incarnates in human form in the 21st century, probably now. He's coming out of the West. And this will be revealed as a great leader and a merging of AI and human and all this stuff. And the whole thing, if we don't snap out of it, we enter the dystopian eighth sphere, and this whole realm of Earth becomes something completely different. And you can see it in some of this. They put it in some of the sci-fi movies to desensitize us and all this other stuff. It's happening right now. This is it. So, we either step up or we lay down.
Well, that's the beauty of kind of this world, right? Because all of the change and all the evolution of which you're speaking starts within.
That's right.
And it changes with our own perception.
Yep.
So as we start perceiving the world differently, we can be with the group of the 1/3 of people going through this time frame that literally are going to be experiencing a higher order life.
And we'll take the other third there too.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, the ones that we can at least show. Here's what it is, guys.
Yeah.
Come with us.
And it's not forcing them. It's embodiment. That's another thing. Like there's a whole movement of, you know, conspiracy theorists and that energy. And I was there at one point too, right? We all had to go through that wave. I was pissed off. I was angry. I mean, you know, your cousin shoves David Icke books down your throat when you're 10.
Yeah, everything. I can't even imagine.
You know, your country was put to war through some crazy foreign policy in Iraq war and the revolution and the puppet regimes. You're pissed. I was pissed. I was militant. I was ready for war, right? And so I've gone through that phase. That's evolved into, I don't need to force this down everyone's throat.
Yeah.
I just need to be the embodiment.
Yes.
And that's really what it is. Like you have a choice.
The embodiment.
Be the embodiment. And that's going to create fruits of your own labor within in so many ways. Like maybe I shouldn't sleep at 2 a.m. every night watching TV and stuck on social media. Maybe that's like not in my best interest for my evolution as a human being. You know, maybe I should be getting up at 5:30 on the rise, drinking clean water, activating my body and spirit, and getting into my breath. At the end of the day, that's just self-love. You know, do you love yourself enough to do the things you know that are good for you?
And I think that ultimately will be what changes your world experience.
That's right. That's without that, your world experience is distorted. It's a distorted lens, and then you're angry, and you know it's the whole same thing. How many people are addicted to, you know, psychotropic drugs today? You know, it's like what? You know, and it's fucked up, man. You know, and so that hurts me. I feel that. I have that empathy in me. That's another thing. Like how much of us are actually embodying true empathy? You know, and that's a faculty that's I believe is really built through children at an early age. You know, and showing them that it takes hard work to get here. You know, we always think about the spoiled rich kid and rich guy, but it's so much deeper than that. It's like you got to open these things up at an early age, and if you're past that age, we got to reverse engineer it. And there's ways to do that. Yeah. And that's deep work. That's deep honoring work. You and I have a trip to the desert coming pretty soon.
Yes, we do.
We're going to do some unraveling there.
Yes, we're unraveling.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking forward to it. Chervin, thank you so much. It's been such an honor to have you here. Thank you for sharing with us the story of your father.
Thank you for bringing that out for me. That felt really good, brother. I mean, that was like obviously endorphins released there, but to have that connection with a brother that you trust and love, it's just our bond just got closer.
I learned a lot about you today, and about what makes you tick, and what your mission is, and why you're here, and that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, guys. Find Chervin at Chervin333.
There it is
on Instagram. He's also on Telegram. I'm sure you've got a link tree or whatever on your page, right? The people that go to your Instagram page can find you on other things.
I do not.
You do not? Okay,
yeah.
Well, I'll help you get that one of those. But definitely follow this guy. He's an amazing embodiment of how we'd like to see the world.